We were talking about, just a recap, we talked about Somalis and how they started the immigration that started in 1991 after the fall of Siad Barre in Somalia in 1991, and then how it kind of caught up, and then the number of Somalis in the US, which are about over 300,000 in the US, Somalis, and then the kind of friction that they've been facing, the differences in history. For instance, the reason why they do not identify easily with the Afro Americans was because of a couple of things, which included different migration history. The Black Americans came to the US through slavery, and Somalis came through a different kind of route reasons. Somalis mostly arrived as refugees fleeing civil war, and their experiences and priorities kind of also changed. They went specifically to rebuild to rebuild Somalia and their nation back. And the Americans are basically about national kind of patriotism or national nationhood in the US fully, not just kind of dual citizen or stuff like dual kind of existence in different countries. So let me just do this. And for those who are not know exactly what's going on, that's a little bit. So I'm on the third point. You can refer to our previous live. I'm on the third point that just ended. I'm on the fourth point right now. Economic competition and scarcity. Concentrated cities where Somalis are, like Minneapolis, creates passive competition for jobs, housing, and school resources, breeding friction. That's what happened when I was dealing with, and then the power kind of went off. Basically, I would like to go on with this kind of live. If somebody could hit me up on the comment section about the next item or topic you'd really want someone to handle right now. But since I'm not seeing anybody, okay, I'm just going to run this up. We shall see what happens in the end, okay? So, this kind of competition of survival about the jobs, housing, and school resources. When you have a neighbor who comes in and your resources are a bit scarce and the priority to that community is kind of low, of course there's always competition. And where there is competition, there's going to be conflict. So people are fighting for their survival, for instance, in Minneapolis and certain other concentrated neighborhoods. So there's that conflict, which will always arise. I mean, whether humans or animals, the same thing. There's just room enough for but a few. So how do we go on from here? Then media-driven scapegoating. High-profile fraud cases and immigration raids have put Somalis in the headlines in ways that polarize local opinion and inflame mistrust. As a matter of fact, there's no smoke without fire. This type of fire, it's kind of backed by the media, backed by proof of fraud, about children who are not in right, sick children, and then the fleecing or the kind of robbing. They say the US government said, the president said that Somalis have defrauded the US of over $1 billion. You know what $1 billion is? You know what that means? That can rebuild the whole Somalia. If that money was to really get to Somalia, it would be a different nation right now. Mogadishu would really look different. Okay. So, of course, the media blows this up because the media likes investigating. And guess what? The culprits were the Somalis, And you can go and Google that. Why is it that the US says that America has kind of defrauded the United States, of over $1 billion? That's a big thing, And then the other thing is language and cultural barriers. Limited English. The Somalis actually know limited English. I mean, this is the case even around Eastern Africa. Few Somalis actually know English. So it's not just out there. But the Somalis, kind of the way they know limited English, and then they like sticking to their languages and Arabic, and they kind of brings in a kind of social taboo because Arabic is kind of related to conflict and terrorism and things like that. So people feel a little uncomfortable. And I wish the Somalis knew better. They would rather learn to really speak English, even in Africa. Why don't they just embrace English as a national language? I think that can kind of promote unity because you speak in the same language. So this limited English among recent arrivals and different social codes reduce everyday interaction and mutual understanding. You know, you automatically become a suspect when you're speaking Arabic in the US. Everybody relates you to Bin Laden or whatever it is they want to, whatever it is. So it kind of causes mistrust. So then political representation and priorities. Somali leaders and issues like refugee policies and homeland ties, these leaders push for refugee policies and homeland ties day in, day out. They do not stand for American values, or they do not stand mostly for American values. They push their agenda at the expense of the Americans who elected them into office to represent communities and not just the Somali communities. So this is kind of causing a lot of problem. As in, it's really a big problem. This is really big and it's huge, and someone really needs to check this out. Sometimes, this following of different political agendas, different from the Black Americans, is actually fueling a lot of conflict, unnecessary conflict. Like, there's a saying that says that when you go to Rome, act like the Romans. Why don't you for once act like Americans? When you come back to Somalia or to Africa or to your homeland, please act like Somalis. Right now, you're in a different land. I mean, I'm not against you being out there. If I was given an opportunity, I would also be in your shoes right there. But try to assimilate, try to integrate, try to embrace the American theory and study the life and live the life, and allow your children to be married to non-Muslims or non-Somalis, And this thing of racism, I mean, sometimes we attract what we are. Not all Somalis behave the same way, but even in Africa, there's kind of been this kind of scenario where people are really finding it very hard to accept Somalians or embrace them fully in their communities. Why? Because of this conservative, hidden, insulated lifestyle. Like I told you, that this kind of generates suspicion for terrorism or something like that. And you really have to avoid this. You see what I mean? And then there's this generational youth tensions. Second generation youth Somali navigate dual identities. This one I mentioned it, and I said I'll visit it. And sometimes clash with local Black youth in school, in gangs and neighborhood, kind of to do with belonging. Who do they stand for? They are Blacks in the US. Stand with the Blacks in the US. You cannot identify as white when you're Somali, and you identify as African. If you go African, go Africa the whole way. Africa stand for Afro-Americans. As long as they're Africans, you're all Blacks. You all identify as the same, Black. And I need to tell you something funny. Tupac looked like Somali. Tupac Shakur. You know what I mean? Would have easily identified as Somali. But this guy embraced his ancestry, which is, of course, Africa, but then also he realizes African American, and he did all that, and that is how they were able to pull it off. I mean, you not identifying as either fully African or not identifying as fully, okay, you identify fully as African, not identify fully as Afro or a Black in the US, is kind of very tricky. It will always cause you to be at loggerheads with the surrounding communities because you leave them in their own fights, which fights are guaranteed to keep you safe and to have your voice known to the powers that be. So then there is trauma and trust deficits. These guys, when they come to the US, they have this trauma. Have you ever been a refugee? You feel like you're in a foreign country, you're an alien, you're not needed, you're good for just there to survive, basically. And then suddenly those things begin to fall off. But then that trauma is kind of hidden. It can pass on even through genes to the next generation. And then you can kind of influence your children to really erase that kind of trauma and refugee status and that kind of trust issues. It's really not easy. You know, it's hard for Somalis to trust fellow Somalis. It's easier for them to trust whites. That's why I'm saying that, hey, why don't you just embrace the American lifestyle and be comfortable? Take on a new identity, change your names. If possible, change your religions, embrace and feel free. Then you can really choose and see where you can really fall. I'm not trying to vote for anybody to do anything wrong, but I'm just being realistic here. You know, this is what I would have done. I've been to different countries, probably about 20 different countries with different backgrounds. But every country I go to, I identify as a person of that country. So much that people even fail to know what is my origin. You understand what I mean? So learn to eat what they eat, do what they do, believe in what they believe in, stand for what they stand in. This is what they call community, because community has the word unity in community. So you really have to, I think we really have to break our boundaries and reach out and embrace the development or the new world or the new trends in life and kind of fit in. Because I know Somali to be good people. But let me first finish the 10th of my point. It says structural racism and just getting rid of a mosquito that was disturbing me. Structural racism here. So structural racism and that flattens differences. You know, there's systematic segregation among Black population in the US. And it's not necessarily the administration. Some can just be community, different races versus Blacks, or versus Africans, or versus Black Americans who are identified as Africans. And the investment these things put both groups into competition without deliberate bridge building. You know, if there is competition for resources, for housing, for school, and for health, and stuff like that, it really becomes hard to live in harmony. And bridge building is really hard. One of the best ways to do this, I'm not trying to recruit anybody to any religion, but it's about changing your religious beliefs or being a little more accommodating. You know, study more about the other religion and let them also know about you. This kind of cultural exchange helps integrate and promote unity easily. So this is what I'm saying. Somalis in the US can be very good businessmen. They have shown that in East Africa a lot. Currently, as I'm talking, most businesses are run by Somalis in Kenya. Thanks to the American dollar that came in. Okay, it's not Arab money. The American dollar came in to finance the development of Somali businesses in Africa. And I can tell you, these guys are excellent at what they do. They have their own form of McDonald's and things like that. And they are really good at what they do. They are really good at what they do. They have this chain, this company called Javekaf. Among them, there's, Somalis are good at cooking. They have the best food, for instance, in East Africa. Not, of course, after Ethiopians. And these guys can really make very good food. And if they would play their cards right in the US, these guys would go on the top of the ladder in terms of providing good restaurants and stuff like that in the US. If only they could be more accommodating. And like I told you, that when you go to Rome, act like the Romans. I mean, do not say, no, I am Somali, I cannot act like Romans. Okay? When you go to the US, act like an American. Stand for their rights, stand for what they stand for, follow their constitution fully, and there will be no problem at all. I want to really tell you, there would be no problem at all between the US and Somali people. Even right now, that thing can be fixed. I could say that let the Somali representatives in the Senate, in whatever government institutions, kind of set up a kind of common room. Number one, apologize on behalf of all Somalians. Just apologize. Why don't you just apologize for what has been done, which was not right, and say you're going to fix it? I mean, it's that simple. I think you owe Americans an apology. I mean, let's be honest. Americans do not owe you any apology. You owe Americans an apology. And remember things like Black Hawk Down, and the history of how Americans lost their Marines in the US. And then about, let's say, the piracy in the Indian Ocean. And guess who is head of this? Is Somalis are known to do this. So, and then about what's happening in Kenya and who is being blamed. They're blaming Somalis for terrorism. I mean, right now, try to win friends and try to forget all about your enemies. Because I'm telling you, this looks like a spark, but the forest is big. One little thing can change everything, and everything can spiral downwards and can really be wrong. Let the Somalian community apologize to the Americans on behalf of their own who defrauded Americans, pretending that children are sick of some sort of health and they're using that to fleece money out of the Americans, yet the American taxpayer is paying their money to see them live. An apology is not a big thing. Just say, I'm sorry. Let's start new. Begin to have classes. Begin to have meetings between, various people with the Somalis. And you're on top of the game. I mean, if you can't pull this off, come and get me in Africa. I can come and help you do this. It's very simple. The Americans believe in apologies. They don't believe in revenge. Okay? They're not like other places who believe in revenge. No. So let's just get this together and get done with this. I think, like I said, Somalis are very good business people. I need to show you something very small, but it's out of my reach. These guys, these Somalis, are very good in businesses. They have come up with new businesses, transportation and feeding in East Africa, and they have really shown what they can do. But I wish some of this money would really have gone back to Somalia, redevelop Mogadishu, redevelop Somali villages, kind of come up with new settlements and kind of farming techniques and agriculture, and promote afforestation, buy fertilizers, improve irrigation, boreholes and things like that. Somalia could be a better country to live in. And this is my call now, as I'm winding up. Let Somalians get back to the drawing board and see how to reinvest back in Mogadishu and the areas around, and forget all about these tribal conflicts. There's already been tribal conflicts and militias. Let them kind of calm down and rebuild Somalia. I think Somalia has a very, very great future. And apart from that, they're very beautiful. Do you know Iman, one of the supermodels who featured in Michael Jackson's video Into the Closet? Iman? Yeah, that lady was really a beauty. Somali people are beautiful and they're very intelligent. And I think Somalia can make Africa proud again. Let them unite, get back and try to put their act together, apologize to the US, ask for support on resettlement back in Somalia. I think they can really pull it off. If other countries could do so, then why not Somalia? Why not Somalia? You're not the biggest sinners and you're not the most cursed in the human race. Somalia can rise again. So, without much ado, I would like to thank you all for your time, and please drop in your comments on what topic you'd like me to go live on again, as we make people proud again to know that the Africans with a decent background and who are just there to be as refugees who are willing to come back home, settle, rebuild their communities. And you never know, there's a lot of oil in Somalia. There are other minerals in Somalia that have never been discovered. And probably you could be the people who are heading this sort of next generation back home into your motherland, into the cradle land. Yeah, we're proud of you. We wish you the best. Please open up to the Americans. Please apologize, and everything is going to be fine. And try to see on how to resettle back into Africa. I'm out of here. I'm your boy, Shiloh. Yeah. Thank you so much. Hit me up. Drop in your comments. I'll see you soon. I'm proud of you. Thank you. I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. Mouth. Thank you so much. You